and it's Chapter 11. 50 years of the problem have led to many changes in our society. Not all of them are what you'd expect. When the great Tom Rotwell and Marissa Fitz went public with their discoveries all that time ago, the general reaction was shock and panic. Their first publication, What Binds the Departed to Us, proposed that certain objects connected to violent deaths or other traumas might become, quote, psychically charged, and so act as a source or gateway for supernatural activity. Human remains, precious belongings, or indeed any potential object of desire might fall into this category, as might the exact location of a murder or accident. The idea caused a sensation. Public frenzy took over, and for a while, any object, even dimly supposed to have some kind of psychic residue, was treated with terror and disgust. Items of old furniture was burned, and random antiques smashed or thrown into the Thames. A priceless painting in the National Portrait Gallery was hurled to the floor and trampled on by a vicar because it looked at me in a funny way. Anything with a strong connection to the past was considered suspect, and a cult of modern objects grew up, which remains with us even now. The notion that anyone might be interested in sources for their own sake was laughable. They were perilous and needed to be destroyed. It was left to the agencies to deal with them. Before long, it turned out that forbidden things were of interest after all to several different kinds of customer. And there were customers, people, and where there are customers, people will be found to supply them. A black market in psychic artifacts soon began, with a new category of criminal operating in its heart, the so-called, quote, relic men. During my apprenticeship with Jacobs in the north of England, I was taught that the wicked relic men was in every respect the moral opposite of what a good agent stood for. Both hunted out sources, the relic man driven by a desire for profit, and an agent driven by a desire for public good. Both had psychic talent, but while an agent used his to protect society from visitors, the relic man gave this no thought at all. An agent disposed of a dangerous artifact carefully, first encasing them in silver or iron, then taking them to the Fitz furnaces in Clerkenwell to be burned. A relic man, by contrast, sold his prizes to the highest bidder. Rumours abounded of sinister collectors, of wild-eyed cultists, and worse, those who squirreled away deadly sources for purposes that ordinary citizens would fear to fathom. Relic men were thieves, in short, society's bottom feeders who skulked in graveyards and charnel houses, looking for unwholesome scraps to trade. Unsurprisingly, they often came to bad ends. Few ends, at least, if his expression was anything to go by, were quite as bad as that which had befallen the unfortunate Dwayne Nettles, and our discovery of his body caused a great stir at Kensal Green. Before the hour was out, Inspector Barnes arrived. Soon the place was crawling with deep-rack forensic scientists, with Kipps and his associates hovering on the sidelines. Kipps inevitably reacted to our find with agitation and, being desperate not to miss any clues we might have found, kept getting in the way of the forensic team until Barnes bluntly told them to get lost. In truth, though, there was little more to be learned. A search of the canal bank beyond the wall revealed no sign of Nettles's associate or the missing mirror, and the exact cause of the relic man's death remained a mystery. What with all the commotion, it was late afternoon before we could disperse on our different missions. Lockwood and I took a taxi south toward the city. George, cracking with suppressed excitement, set off for the dusty archives. The night watch kid, who now seemed to think of himself as an honorary agent, strutted round with an air of great importance, cap set at a rakish angle. was packed off to resume his duties, with strict instructions to call on us at Portland Row if he heard anything of further interest. Whether it was Lockwood's energy and charisma, his adventure in our company, or, most likely, the money in his pocket, the kid readily agreed. We still didn't know his name. "So," I said to Lockwood 5 minutes later as the taxi moved steadily down the Edgware Road, "aren't you going to tell me where we're going?" The shadows in the main street were thin, bathed in gold. The shops had begun their last great flurry of activity before the long, slow, sensual onset of dusk. The agents call this borrowed time, extra hours of sunlight you only get in midsummer. During these hours, many people seem to be filled with strange, feverish energy, the kind of defiance against the looming dark. They do a lot of eating, drinking, and spending. The shops were bright and cheery, the pavements thronged, and the ghost lamps were just coming on. Lockwood's face was lit by traces of the dying sun. He'd been unaccountably silent, deep in thought, but when he turned to me his eyes sparkled with the thrill of the chase. As always, that awoke a similar thrill in me. "We're going to see a contact of mine," he said. "Someone who might be able to find our missing man." "Who is he? A policeman? Another agent?" "No, a relic man, or a relic woman, really. Her name is Flo Bones." I stared at him, my thrill diminished. "A relic woman?" "Yeah, just a girl I know. We'll find her down by the river somewhere once it's dark." He looked blandly out the window again, as if he'd suggested nipping into a shop or something equally mundane. And again I had that tipping sensation, the slosh of blood inside my head, like I'd had when the skull was whispering to me. It was the feeling of parameters shifting, old certainties becoming misaligned. Secretive, deceitful, that's what the skull had said. Obviously I didn't believe that for a moment. Still, I'd lived with Lockwood for a full year, and this was the first time I'd heard of Flo Bones. "This relic girl," I said. "How did you meet? I've never heard of you talk about her before." "Flo? I met her a long time ago, when I was just starting out." "But relic men are, well, they operate outside the law, don't they? It's illegal for any agent to fraternize with them." "Since when have you become a stickler for Deepak's rules, Luce? Anyway, we need all the help we can get on this one. We're in a race against time with Kipps. Plus, this job is more dangerous and puzzling than I'd thought." "You mean the mirror, of course." I could still picture the body in the graveyard, the popping eyes, the mouth drawn back into a slash of horror. "The mirror, yes, but there's more to it than that. Barnes isn't telling us everything. This isn't any old source, which is why George's job is so crucial now." Lockwood stretched languidly. "Anyway, Flo's all right. She's not quite as antisocial as the other relic men. She'll talk to you, though she is cranky. You just need to know the right way. Which reminds me." Lockwood swiveled suddenly in his seat, lifted the swinging lavender crucifix, and spoke through the hatch. "If we could stop by Blackfriars Station, driver. You know that little newsagent's there?" "Yes." He turned to me and grinned. "We need to get some licorice." Between Blackfriars and Southwark Bridge, which connect the City of London with the ancient borough of Southwark, the River Thames turns gradually into the southeast. Here the current slows slightly, and at low tide, a broad expanse of mud flats is exposed beneath the south side of Southwark Bridge, where sediment dropped by the river has built up around the curve. Lockwood pointed this out to me as we walked across the bridge in the glare of the dying sun. "She'll be down there, most likely," he said, "unless she's changed her habits, which is about as probable as her changing her underwear. She starts the night at the Southwark Reaches, where the stuff's washed up by the tide. Later, she'll move downstream, following the tide line. What's she looking for? I asked, although I'd guessed it already. You name it. Bones, relics, drowned things, things scarred up from the mud river. She sounds delightful, I said. Can't wait to meet her. I adjusted my rapier grimly. Don't try any heavy stuff on Flo, Lockwood warned. In fact, best thing is to leave the talking to me. We can go down there. We ducked through a gap in the parapet and descended the stone steps that hugged the brickwork of the bridge. Its arch soared over us. There was a powerful smell of mud and decay. We alighted on the cobbled lane which ran along the embankment and walked down it a little way. A rusted streetlight clung like a dead tree to the low wall overlooking the river. Behind us there were warehouses, dark and cliff-like. A faint apricot pink sphere of light gleamed about a lamp, illuminating nothing but a narrow flight of steps leading down below the wall. Above and all around were space and river mist, and the flowing onset of the night. Lockwood said, "We move carefully now. Don't want to scare her off." The steps led steeply down toward the river. From the wall, we could see the northern bank, a broken snake of lights, with London's great grey mess of spires behind. The tide was fully out. The river's sullen glister hung low and far away. It was very quiet everywhere. Lockwood nudged me and pointed. A lantern was moving out on the mud flats, an orange light held close to the ground, its reflection flinting just beneath it, faint as a shade. It swooped wet and pale across the shingle, lighting the stones and weed and all the river's washed up flotsam, the wood and plastics, fragments of metal bottles, drowned and rotted things. A stooped, slow-moving figure walked above the lantern light, cocooning it as if to shroud it jealously from all sight. It moved with methodical purpose, stopping now and then to pick something up in the debris. A heavy sack, which was dragged behind, carved an intermittent furrow in the slime. Whether it was the trail it left, or its hunched and rounded shape, the figure seemed more like a giant snail from the bottom of the Thames than a fellow human being. "You want to talk to that?" I whispered. Lockwood made no answer, but pattered down to the down the river stairs. I followed. Halfway down the steps became soft and wet with moss. Lockwood reached the last step, but went no further. He raised a hand and called out over the dark expanse, "Hey, Flo!" Away across the mud, a figure froze. I sensed, rather than saw, a pale face staring at us from afar. Lockwood raised his voice again. "Flo!" "What if it is? I haven't done nothing." The reply, rather high and cracked, didn't carry well. It would have been natural to move closer, but Lockwood was cautious. He remained standing on the bottom step. "Hey, Flo, it's Lockwood." Silence. The figure straightened abruptly. I thought for a moment it was going to turn and run, but then the voice came, faint, hostile, guarded. "You? What the bloody hell do you want?" "Oh, that's fine," Lockwood murmured. "She's in a good mood." He cleared his throat and called out again. "Can you talk?" The distant person considered. For a few seconds we heard nothing except the slop and slosh of the river along the shore. "No, I'm busy. Go away." "I brought licorice." "What? You're trying to bribe me now? Bring money." More silence, just the sucking of the water. Away in the haze, a head was cocked to one side. "What kind of licorice?" "Come and see." I watched as the figure began to plough its way rapidly toward us through the mire. It was a limping witch, a night hag from a child's fever dream. My heart beat fast. Um, what would have happened, I said, if she wasn't in a good mood? Best not to ask, Lockwood said. I saw her chuck an agent into the river once, he went on reflectively. Just lifted her up by the leg and tossed her in. Flo was in a good mood that day too, as it happens. But she'll like you, I'm almost sure. Just don't say too much and stay out of stabbing distance. I'll handle it from here. The shambling creature drew close, dragging the sack, bearing the light it bore before it. I glimpsed a pale and filthy hand, the crown of a tattered straw hat. Great boots sucked and slurped at the mud and shingle. Lockwood and I instinctively moved up a step. A sudden groan, a curse. The sack was swung up and over to land on the stone below. At last the figure straightened. She stood in the mud beneath the steps and stared at us. In the light of the lantern, I got a proper look at her for the first time. The first shock, now that she'd rid herself of the burden, was that she was tall, half a head taller than me. It was hard to tell any more about her shape. This was fine by me. No sane person would have wanted to look beneath her clothes. She wore an utterly foul blue puffer jacket that went down almost to her knees. The lower reaches were dark with moisture, caked with river mud. The zip was open, providing glimpses of a pale expanse of a dirty neck, a grimy shirt collar, and patched and shapeless jersey hanging down over ancient and faded jeans. Uh, she'd either had the biggest feet of any female I'd ever met, or was wearing man's Wellington boots, or both. The boots, which reached her knees, were splayed outward like a duck's, um, and were ripple-stained by muck and water. A length of rope, tied twice around her waist, served as a makeshift belt. Something hung there in the recesses of her coat. I thought it might have been a sword, which is illegal for a non-agent to wear. From her hobbled approach and shapeless outline, she might have very well been elderly. So the second shock came when she pushed back her broad-brimmed hat, and from under it a spray of hair, the colour and stiffness of old straw, radiated outwards from a wide and grubby forehead. Dirt had collected in the creases running across it, and in the lines beside her eyes. In this she was no different from any vagrant queuing for safe quarters overnight, but she was young, still in her teens. She had a small, up-tilted nose, a wide face, pinkish cheeks, smeared with grey, bright blue eyes that sparkled in the lantern light. Her mouth was broad and contemptuous, and her head jutted forward aggressively. She took me in with a single glance, and then focused her attention on Lockwood. "Well, you haven't changed," she said. "Still as la-dee-da as ever, I see." Lockwood grinned. "Hello, Flo. Well, you know me." "Yeah. So you still can't afford a suit that fits? Don't bend over too quick or those wearing those trousers. That's my advice." "I thought I'd never see you again." "Did you? I don't remember. Did I say I'd brought licorice whirls?" "Like that changes anything. Give 'em here." A paper bag was produced and delivered to a claw-like hand, which stowed it in some unmentionable recess beneath the coat. The girl sniffed. "So who's this trollop?" "This is Lucy Carlyle, my associate," Lockwood said. "I should say at once that she has no connection with DPRAC, or the police, or Rotwell Agency. She is an independent operative, working with me, and I trust her with my life. Lucy, this is Flo." "Hello, Flo," I said. "Florence Bonnard to you, I'm sure," the girl said in a hoity-toity voice. "So you've got another posh in here, Lockwood." I blinked indignantly. "Excuse me, I'm working class northern. And when you say another— Listen, Flo, I know you're busy." It was Lockwood's immolid voice. the one he used in tough corners, with irritable clients and angry creditors who came knocking on our door. The full gigawatt smile would be coming next, sure as day. I don't want to bother you, he said, but I need your assistance. Just a little bit of information, then I'll be gone. A crime's been committed, a kid's been hurt. We've got a lead on a relic man who did it, but we don't know where to find him, and we were wondering if you could help. The blue gaze narrowed, the creases around the eyes disappeared into the dirt. Don't flash that smile at me. This relic man, he got a name? Jack Carver. A cold breeze blew across the river, rippling the matted stalks of Flo Bones' hair. Sorry, there's a code of silence among our kind. We can't peach on each other. That's just the way it is. First I've heard of it, Lockwood said. I thought you were famous for your cutthroat rivalry and happy to sell each other's grandmas for a sixpence. The girl shrugged. Those two things ain't mutually exclusive if you want to stay healthy. She grabbed at the neck of the hempen bag. I don't want to be washed up by the down tide, so that's the end of it. Goodbye. Flo, I gave you little licorice whirls. That's not enough. No good, Lockwood, I said. She's scared. Come on. I touched his arm and made as if to climb the steps. The girl's face was a sullen, white oval staring up at me. What did you say? Lucy, that's probably not wise, but I'd have had enough of keeping quiet. Flo Bones annoyed me, and I was going to let her know it. Sometimes politeness only gets you so far. It's all right, I said. She can go back to scrabbling gently in the mud while we get on with hunting the guy who coshed a kid and robbed a grave and now has a vicious artifact that probably threatens London. Each to their own. Come on. A hop, a skip, and a stench that made my toenails curl, a puff of jacket crackling against my coat, a jutting face pressed into mine. I was thrust back against the stonework of the steps. I don't like what you're saying, Flo Bones said. It's okay, I said sweetly. I'm not blaming you. People have to know their limitations. Most avoid danger, no matter what. It's just the way things are. Now, I don't want to scuff your coat. You think I avoid danger? You think there's no danger in what I do? A series of emotions passed across the girl's face at this point. Anger, outrage, followed by a long, slow dawn of cunning realization. But what with all the darkness and dirt, and her sheer stomach-turning proximity, it was impossible to be sure. Tell you what, she said, and suddenly she was away from me and dancing down the steps again, light-footed and nimble, beneath her cumbersome boots and coat. Tell you what, I'll make you a deal. You do something for me, I'll do something for you. With a crunch, she landed back on the shingle and took up the lantern. Come out onto the reaches with me, unless you're afraid of getting your feet wet. Afterwards, I'll tell you about him. You know Jack Carver, then, Lockwood said. You'll tell us what you know? Yes. Her eyes glistened, her mouth grinned broadly. First, just a little gentle scrabbling in the mud, something you can help me with, and I ain't able to do. Lockwood and I glanced at each other. Speaking personally, the girl's insane grin didn't inspire enormous confidence, but we didn't have much choice if this line of inquiry was to proceed. We jumped down into the mud and sand. 20 minutes later, my boots were sopping, my leggings soaked as high as my calves. 3 times I'd stumbled, and the side of one arm was caked in mud and sand. Lockwood was in a similar state, but he bore it without complaint. We followed Flo Bones' lantern as it swept and sunk ahead of us like the will o' the wisp, darting from side to side as she picked her way across the mire. Under the sodden blackness beneath the bridge we went, and out onto the Southwark reaches, with the tide wall of the embankment curling steadily away from us to the right. River mists had risen. On the opposite bank, the wharfs rose from the water like rotted black cliffs, soft and formless. Faint red and orange lights pulsed on the tips of the crane masts and at the jib's ends. "Here we are," Flo Bones said. She raised the lantern. 2 rows of great black wooden posts emerged from the muck, 12 feet tall or more, tracing a line of a long lost wharf or pier. Their sides were thick with weeds, mostly black, in places faintly luminous. Barnacles and shells clung to them too, rising above her heads to the tide line. In places, rotten spars still spanned between the posts. To her left, the furthest posts rose from the water, but where we stood, the muck was soft and granular, with millions of tiny stones. Flo Bones seemed energized. She tossed her sack aside and bounded up to us. "Here," she said again, "there's something I want. I've never been able to get." Lockwood took his torch out and shone it around. "Show us where. If it's heavy, I've got rope in my pack." Flo chuckled. "Oh, it's heavy. I'm sure it's very small. No, right now, you got to wait. Stand tight. It won't be long." With this, she skipped away toward the nearest post, rounded it, and zigzagged to another, chuckling throatily all the while. I leaned close to Lockwood. "You realize," I whispered, "that she's completely mad?" "She's certainly a bit odd, and so disgusting. Ah, have you even got close to her? That smell!" "I know," Lockwood said mildly. "It is a bit intense." "Intense! I can feel my nose hair shriveling, and if—" I stopped, suddenly alert. "What is it, Lucy?" "Do you feel that?" I said. "Something starting." I pulled up my sleeve. The skin was peppered with goose pink pimples. My heart had given a double beat, and the back of my neck was tingling. As an agent, you learn to listen to these signs, early warnings of a manifestation. "Creeping fear," I said, "and chill. Also," I wrinkled my nose, "you smell that? There's a miasma building." Lockwood sniffed. To be frank, I thought that was Flo. "No, it's visitors." As one, we drew our swords, stood watchful and alert. Away among the posts, Flo's bobbing light became still. We heard her fretful crooning. Mists swirled, and a new night darkened around us. Ghosts came. And that's the end of chapter 12.